Hi, my name is Darrin Degraaf, and I'm serving today as the Senior Associate Pastor at Beulah Alliance Church. Beulah is a church with a 90-year history of impacting the people of Alberta. If we look back over the 90-year history, Beulah started as a mission in the city of Edmonton, Alberta, reaching out to single, young, pregnant women. 90 years ago, of course, that was quite a place to be invested in our community. Over the past 90 years, Beulah has directly or indirectly had the opportunity to impact over 50 church plants. We've helped to launch churches across our province, and in fact have also participated in launching churches around our world. Today, we remain a church with a commitment to our Alliance roots while also having a strong passion to reach across our community. Our vision being to reach 1% or to spiritually impact 1% of our region. For us, that would be touching the lives of 12,000 people. I come from a background in leadership development. I found myself in an interesting place at the age of 28 where I was a youth pastor and young adult pastor, but found that when I looked at what I was spending my time doing, I was spending my time primarily investing in the lives of leaders. We were able to build strong leadership communities where the leaders themselves became catalysts of ministry and impacted hundreds of young people and young adults through a church at that time that was quite small. I was called from that point to serve as the youngest denominational leader in a Baptist denomination in Ontario and Quebec, where at the age of 35, I found myself as the Director of Leadership Development, responsible for the ordination, for the development of leaders, even for the discipline of pastors, most of whom, of course, were 20 years my senior. From there, I was called to serve at Arrow Leadership, an organization that's committed to the development and growth of Christian leaders around the world, where we spent all day, every day, thinking about how to invest in the lives of fantastic leaders who had been called into work in Christ's kingdom. Today, as Senior Associate Pastor of Beulah, I serve as the Chief of Staff for our Senior Pastor, and am responsible for developing some amazing young leaders, as well as some older and more mature leaders who exist within our leadership structure.
Darrin, tell us a little bit about what leadership development looks like at Beulah.
Mm-hmm. Well, I've come to Beulah only over the last 18 months, and when I arrived, we were a church with a very strong staff structure, but unfortunately the staff had found themselves in a place where they were doing a lot of the leadership work that we believed at a senior level should really be facilitated through our laity. As a result, we've gone through an 18-month process. Leadership Network has been fantastic in helping us in doing this, in creating an entire new pipeline. In fact, we've created 2 pipelines that have helped us to change the trajectory of how leadership looks here at Beulah. So for us, the first step that we took was developing a new strategy for our staff and helping our staff to understand and re-articulate their roles as being those who are pastors and leaders to being those who lead leaders who lead other leaders. That's been a dramatic shift for us, and it's required us to do a lot of internal work with our staff. At the same time, what that's freed us up to do is to articulate to our staff the idea of recruiting not just volunteers, not even just leaders within our ministry context, but to recruit coaches, and this new designation that we've created for our laity called Ministry Catalysts. And a ministry catalyst is a layperson who owns a significant portion of our ministry.
Tell us a little bit about some of those transitions with the staff. What were some of the things you did to really help reorient them from being doers or individual performers to now the new role that the staff play?
Yeah. You know, we've had to take a multifaceted approach to that, and in our staff development plan, we've worked hard to ensure that we're continuing to build community. We do the BCWI process annually, and for us it's really important that we have a healthy staff culture where staff feel engaged, where they feel motivated, but they also are glad to come to work every morning. So we've worked hard on retaining that sense of community, while we've also moved to much more clearer sense of metrics in terms of holding them accountable to such things as how many people's shoulders they've tapped on a weekly basis. We set some weekly goals around here of impacting 2 or 3 brand new individuals every week that they're tapping their shoulders to move into the beginning stages of our pipeline. And we've also set some really strategic goals for each one of our pastors in terms of articulating who are the ministry catalysts that they're pouring into. We feel that's going to be a longer process, and so over this next year, we've set a goal that every single one of our ministry leaders, our staff, are able to articulate 2 new ministry catalysts that they're building into. They might be at the very beginning stages of owning those ministries, but they're laity who are owning those ministries. And then we've put alongside that a process where our senior staff, particularly our senior pastor, Keith Taylor, will have the opportunity to personally touch those who are serving in a coaching role or those who are now our new ministry catalysts. It's been a challenge for us to work with our staff to move them away from pastoral leadership as they've sensed it in the past into this new mode of being leader developers.
Tell me a story of 1 or 2 of those staff that have made that kind of switch.
Yeah. So as I look over our staff, we have a fantastic young staff member. His name's Daniel. He's leading our team that's focused on community life and adult ministries. And for him, the shift has looked like he's created a leadership pathway for our mid-sized communities, which are groups, some churches call them pastorates. They're groups of people between 20 and 40, usually in size, that are both committed to building community as well as reaching out into their communities in a missional way. He's developed an entire process by which those folks are called into being developed as leaders, being moved into leadership communities themselves. So he has about 6 leaders of each mid-sized community so that they encourage one another. What we've found is that using a curriculum is only somewhat helpful in that you need to do both leadership development, working on curriculum and moving people through a process, but you also need to do leader development, where we help each one of those leaders to articulate their personal call and to grow in the personal gaps that they have. So Daniel's done a really great job of coaching each one of those leaders while not getting tied up in pastoring them, but rather moving them forward in accomplishing, removing the gaps between where they see themselves as leaders and where we need them to be.
You talked about developing 2 pipelines, which was more of the staff and developing the staff in greater areas of leadership. And then we talked about another pipeline. Tell us a little bit about that other pipeline.
Yeah, so our other pipeline that we've created is articulating the clear steps of leadership development for our laity. So we move right from the very start of that. Attend church, they attend a small group, they're growing as followers of Jesus. They may at that point not even be serving in any capacity. They move from being a participant into becoming a volunteer. They enter the pipeline, if you will, at that point. But as a volunteer, what's our goal and what's our strategy for helping them to move from volunteer into leading volunteers, into eventually becoming a coach, where they're now leading the leaders of those volunteers, until becoming a ministry catalyst? That's been a substantial challenge for us to articulate to our laity that there's the opportunity for them to lead. In fact, in some cases, we could see where laity would be leading staff, maybe our technical staff who are experts at various technical areas, but where laity are leading them. And articulating the pathway, which includes what are the steps to move from one level of leadership to the other, has been significant for us. It's helped us to articulate what are the steps, in a sense, to create a sense of fairness, so we can show people the documentation that we've created that allows them to see what is my next step in my growth. And in fact, we're articulating those same steps for all lay leaders across our organization.
And how's it working? What kind of progress are you making?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're really in the first stages of developing this. We were just meeting yesterday. One of the things that has really worked for us coming out of the Leadership Network cohort that we were a part of is that we've just, what we discovered Leadership Network did a great job of was corralling us and forcing us to work on leadership development projects. So we've retained a leadership development project team, and that leadership development project team meets probably every 3 to 4 weeks for 2 hours. And in that time, we delegate out responsibilities and projects that we're developing. We're passionate about creating an internship program here that will help us to draw people from within our congregation. We're also just hiring our first resident, we're calling the individual, an older leader from our congregation who's sensing a call to ministry. So the internship and residency programs are at the very top, if you will, of our pipeline in laity, moving folks into intensive ministry opportunities. But what we're also discovering is that we've really had an absence. When we asked our staff to articulate how many people do we have currently serving as ministry catalyst, I think we have a handful across our entire organization. So for a church of 2,700 to have a handful of laity operating at that level, we just saw that as something that we needed to address immediately. So we're addressing that by challenging our staff, as I articulated before, to create 2 new ministry catalysts to be involved in developing them within the context of each one of the departments or the divisions. But we're also creating a whole new leadership community where 2 or 3 times a year we'll be drawing in our top leaders and giving them access to our senior pastor and to some of our other senior leaders, and maybe even bringing in some guests who they'd really want to spend an afternoon learning from or a couple of evenings learning from. So we're trying to create a program that's both, we use the metaphor of aerobic and anaerobic working out. The aerobics is that stuff that all across all of our departments are important in leadership development. And then the anaerobic workout is that which is particular to our guest services team or to our youth ministry or to our worship and arts teams. So we're creating a symbiotic relationship between divisional and skill training, as well as the harder work, the softer work of leadership development.
That's great. So what's still to come? What are some of the things you're still hopeful that you can begin to develop in your leadership development?
Yeah. One of the things that we're wrestling with, and what I'd use the word wrestling because we've been as part of the Leadership Network cohort that we were participating in, we met other churches that have really strong programs in terms of developing their leaders. That moves them faster through the pipeline. The dilemma is that leadership development also has to always articulate that particular need of the leader and his or her place that they find themselves in addressing the gaps that they're currently wrestling with. So for us, one of the ongoing steps of conversation is how do we create a great pipeline that allows larger numbers of people to move while we don't neglect the hard work of developing each leader one at a time. So for us, I think some of the things that are coming up is a modified curriculum that allows for individual flexibility in terms of addressing those specific gaps. For us, the articulation of what a strong internship program would look like. In our context, we think that will be something that's driven through our departments, but that allows us to also, again, create those aerobic environments where interns can come together from various departments and learn from a wider swath of our leadership here. And I'd say that a third aspect that we're really wrestling with is what does it look like to identify those ministry catalyst roles? For our staff, we're discovering that we have to sometimes help brainstorm for them where laity could take substantive leadership because there's been a sense in which staff are very comfortable in a hub and spoke model of leadership and moving them to a constellation model where they're working alongside highly gifted, highly motivated laity who are taking substantial parts of their ministry. That's been a paradigm shift for a lot of our staff.
Well, thanks, Darrin, for spending some time with us today, talking about what Beulah has going on with leadership development. You guys are doing a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.